Welcome back to Scatteryan Podcast. This 2024 current climate of living, I couldn't imagine myself living without the internet. Even with all the baggage that comes with it, I will take it over not having it any day of the week.
Internet access is good. Providing accessibility to a larger audience is good. But to make it a basic human right, is that what we should be worrying about now? And who is going to pay for it?
Finland have implemented internet as a human right since 2009. Estonia put things in place since the year 2000 to make sure that everyone have access to the internet.
There is access and there is having that access, because one thing is to provide, let's say, every area have this broadband connectivity or you can actually access the internet, but that doesn't mean everyone has it.
So you can have access and not be able to afford it. Some people don't even have access to it. They might have the money to pay for the broadband, but it's not even there. There's no fiber optic cables, there's no masts, there is none of those things available for them to be able to connect to. Hey, my people, welcome back to Scatteryan Podcast, where we discuss people and what they do. Hope you're having a beautiful and wonderful day. In today's episode, we're going to be diving into the web of human rights. I'm your guy and the host you love the most, Toves. And joining me to Scatteryan are... Hey, what up? This is Arinze. What can I say? I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ade, and my thoughts I'll be here to convey. I hope you have a lovely time with us.
And hi, everyone. My name is Maurice. I strive to live life with no worries because life is too precious to be curious. So enjoy, travel, and uncover new stories.
Hello, everyone. Greetings to you all. I'm excited to be here with this wonderful team. So hopefully we can have a wonderful dialogue today, and then, you enjoy the ideas and thoughts that we share. Ready to go.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. Hope you all enjoyed the episode as well. As technologies continue to shape our lives, the question of universal internet becomes increasingly relevant. So we're going to be exploring various perspectives around this global discussion about this global phenomenon known as the internet. Now, there's been a conversation or a debate that has been lingering in the background since 2016. I'm talking about access to the internet, and specifically, if the internet should be considered to be a basic human right. In 2021 and 2023, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for the need for universal access to the internet as a basic human right by 2030. The UN has suggested something similar before in 2016, where they mentioned that any measure or any steps to try to intentionally prevent or disrupt access to information online violates international human rights. But the United Nations are hoping that by 2030, all countries should guarantee access to the internet, access to online information as a basic human right. But before we dive into this conversation in detail, let's start from the individual or in our own personal lives. So I'm going to ask everyone. I'll begin with Arinze, then Ade, then Prince, then Maurice. Okay. How has access to internet changed your life or the lives of those around you? Let's begin with Arinze.
In this 2024 current climate of living, I couldn't imagine myself living without the internet because, okay, let me rephrase that because that sounded very nihilistic. But what I mean by that is the internet has become a core staple in pretty much every aspect of my life. Navigation, going from point A to point B. We're talking about information, which is like the most important thing, important usefulness of the internet. So yes, it's been very valuable and it's been a blessing. Even with all the baggage that comes with it, I will take it over not having it any day of the week. Yeah.
And Ade.
Yeah, the internet to me, well, we won't be here without the internet. We won't be recording this call live. The hurdles we had to cross to get to this point on this recording today. And yeah, work, entertainment, everything, almost everything is run on the internet these days. So it is super essential. But the caveat I imagine will be depending on the part of the world where you live. But I think even that, regardless, except you're in a remote tribe somewhere in the Amazon, then you might need the internet. Yeah.
I'd say the internet has been, I mean, it's been instrumental in everyone's life. Like Hadi said, we are all here having this conversation because of the internet. How has the internet changed my life? It's not something I've even thought about because it's like asking me, how has the car changed my life? It's one of those things that's become a part and parcel of you that you don't even spend time to think about. We live on it, we survive on it, and that's it. Like for me, I mean, maybe telling from the social class I belong to, everyone sees the internet as they see the mobile phone or the car as a part and parcel of them. So it's part of our livelihoods. It's part of how we earn our livelihoods, and it's part. It's our hierarchy of needs. We put internet as one of the basics, even So that's how instrumental the internet has been for me and I guess the people around me.
You know, when you raised the question, yeah, I just remembered my first experience with the internet and the impact it had on me. And I think looking back now, it might have contributed to my the path that I'm on currently in terms of my career prospect. Now, I remember back then when I just started back then internet wasn't so accessible. So you would have to go to the cyber cafe and all whatnot. But I would say because I pick up on things quite easily. I was quite good at internet, browsing and all whatnot from a very young age. And I think that really helped me to connect with people because I had so many friends that would come and say, "Oh, teach me how to open an email and show me." And by so many friends, I mean, so many friends of the opposite sex. But again, that kind of helped me to sort of get this personal interactions with people I wouldn't have normally been able to reach out to. And I think that kind of contributed in my personal development, communication with others. But we'll explore all of those topics later. But I think it's very crucial in terms of not just for our careers, but also connectivity, reaching out to people, meeting people. But yeah, it is one very important aspect, just looking back.
Fine, fantastic. And I'm going to piggyback on that as well because I will say access to the internet as well has helped a lot in terms of if you're stuck anywhere, you just have to just order your Uber or find a taxi somewhere online and you can easily get to wherever you're going to. Without internet, I don't know if I would have met my wife either because we met on a dating social site, So even social connections, and as Ade mentioned, we are having this conversation right now on the internet because of access to the internet. So the internet has helped change a lot of lives around the world. However, according to the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner in 2023, there are at least 2.2 billion people under the age of 25 globally that are experiencing a digital divide. Some other reports have said, just in general, 2.7 billion people, but obviously those under 25, 2.2 billion people. And that limitation, that digital divide has limited the access to like education, health information, human rights, etc. And if you go country by country, if you want to break down the 2.2 billion people or 2.7 billion people, however you want to see it, if you want to break it using examples of countries, a recent report from Punch NG, it's an online news organization in Nigeria, suggested that 71% of Nigerians lack access to regular internet.
I can believe it.
According to Yahoo Finance, they came up with like 25 countries that are affected by access to internet. I'll just read out a few, not all of them, because you can find the information online. 35% of people of the population in Togo, as at 2021, did not have access to internet. 24% of people in Rwanda in 2021 did not have access to internet, but Rwanda is kind of progressive, one of the most progressive African countries. So their target is that at least 60% of primary school pupils should have internet by the end of 2024. All right. But 72.2% of people in Pakistan, also after 2021, do not have access to internet. And you're thinking these are just less developed countries or developing countries in quotes. According to Forbes, 42 million Americans have no access to the internet. That's the USA. And in the UK, according to the CDC, which is the Communication and Digital Committee of the Parliament, they suggested that 7 million households in the UK did not have access to the internet. 4 million people don't know how to complete a basic task using the internet, such as open an internet browser, connecting to the Wi-Fi, using the mouse. So no access to digital skills. And they estimate that 5 million workers will be acutely, keyword, acutely underskilled in digital basic skills by 2030. And between 2022 and 2023, 1 million people have cut back or canceled their internet packages because it was too expensive and they could not afford it. So I think my question is, should access to internet be considered a basic human right, or is this a wishful thinking in the cloud? I'll start with Prince.
Said a lot of things jump at me once we begin to think of on the topic, but I'll just touch on a few so the others can come in and we can unpack the ideas further. Should we make the internet a basic human right? That's the question. Is that correct?
Yes.
Should we make the internet a basic human right? There are other basic human rights that conversations and efforts have begun on, and I don't even know where they are at. I was just, as we were reading those statistics, I was wondering if it could be possible to get some similar statistics on the universal basic income, right? Universal basic income, and then progress that has been made on it and what's not. So progress on that, well, from when I last checked, has not been so enormous to even begin to think about the internet becoming a basic human right. The internet access is good. Providing accessibility to a larger audience is good, but to make it a basic human right, it comes across as very idealistic for me now, and it's something I think about and I wonder, wait, is that what we should be worrying about now? With the many problems that are going around, and then is that a basic human right in is it all parts of the world, right? So that's how I'm thinking about it. Maybe the question, should it be constrained geographically? So if you look at developing countries and underdeveloped countries, the people, when they get the internet, what are they going to use it for? Even the media and the medium story they're going to use the internet, some barely have the computers, mobile phones, smartphones, etc. Do people even have access to these? Right? It's like, are we trying to put a roof on an uncompleted building? Or in some places, there's no building at all. So it's like the internet being a universal human right. For me, it's too idealistic to be considered now, and there are several conditions and requirements that are needed to be thought through even before we get to that question of internet becoming a universal human right. And even if you're going to look at it that way, is it the same? Should we make it a universal human right for everyone around the globe, or we should look at it in some countries first, right? And that's something, again, we can unpack later on. And even if we are going to do that, whose responsibility should that be? As I said, should the governments champion these, right? Because things like this, if you want to embark on the journey of making it a universal human right, it could easily become prone to elite capture, right? Where the elite may try to provide internet access to everyone, but making sure that it solidifies their position of being the ruling elite. The economics is also another bit. Who is going to pay for that? Are people going to get it for free? Are they going to subsidize that? Right? Looking at countries, I use Ghana as an example, and I think it applies to some extent in Nigeria. The income, the tax bracket in these developing countries is so small. Governments are trying to expand these tax brackets. It's like very few people are paying for the amenities, then there's so many free riders, right? So we're going to make internet accessibility for everyone, and who is going to pay for it? Is it going to be the governments who are charging very few to provide these? Okay, so the questions that it raises, there's so much that, for me, internet becoming a universal human right is I am sorry to say, but it's one of those things that I reckon the developed countries, the first world countries, may have to bother themselves with. But the developing and the developing countries, we have so much survival concerns, right? We have so much infrastructural concerns that such a question, I wonder even if it will get the attention of the people that we think that they need the internet so much. So there's a few thoughts before it derails. I take everyone down a rabbit hole.
Fair enough. Before I bring Maurice in and then Arinze and then Ade, just want to say, because you mentioned that some countries have to try to implement this first. So a country like Finland have implemented internet as a human right since 2009. In 2009, they were the first nation in the world to declare broadband access as a legal human right. Broadband access as a legal human right. Even in 2000 as well, Estonia put things in place since year 2000 to make sure that everyone have access to the internet, but that's been implemented since about, I think, in the late between 2018 and 2020. Ade might be able to correct me on this one. There's also examples of Greece. There's example of Spain as well. Spain has not explicitly mentioned it as a human right, but they are providing resources to try to make sure that everyone in Spain has access to the internet. So there are examples of countries that have tried to implement this, but I agree with you, like the logistics, which we might discuss later, the logistics, the economics of it might be quite difficult. So Maurice, what do you think? Should it be can it be? I think I've
Can I say one thing before Maurice comes
Go
in,
on.
right? I think maybe I may not have expressed myself clearly, but I'll separate it in two folds. You see, the implementation of the idea is so magnanimous that I wonder, we are so far away from implementation that's why I would dismiss the topic. But the declaration that internet should become a universal human right, I mean, I'm all for that. We can make that declaration. We can make a policy around making internet the universal human right. I mean, countries can do that. The UN can do that. The implementation is so far-fetched. The pragmatism of the implementation is also far-fetched, which is what drives me to, dismiss the subject. But the thought and the position that everyone should have access to it, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But I don't spend time on it because of how far we are from a realistic and a pragmatic implementation of it. So, Maurice, over
Maurice,
to you.
you've
Yeah,
been to
definitely
Finland, so
agree
you
with.
probably can tell us if it was been implemented or it's just a thought.
Yeah, well, just before I go there, yeah, I definitely agree with pretty much everything Prince has said, because there is access and there is having that access. Because one thing is to provide, let's say, every area have this broadband connectivity, or you can actually access the internet, but that doesn't mean everyone has it. So there's a distinction there. So it's just like saying that there is food, but still you have to pay for it. So I think there's a slight distinction there. And also when we talk about fundamental or human rights, it's like I'm trying to put it on the same pedestal as, freedom of speech. And it doesn't even make any sense in my head when I think about it, right? Because I think for fundamental human rights, those things should pretty much be a given at any point in time. So essentially, we cannot do without those rights. So, but for internet, we can definitely do without the internet. And for centuries, people have been living without that. But when you talk about human rights, what comes to mind for me, it's those essentials that you definitely cannot, that are a given, things like freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion and whatnot. So putting internet on the same table, I just think it's a little bit,
Utopian.
yeah, it just doesn't sit right with me. I don't know what the rest of the panel think.
Let me take it a little bit further than that. I think Trace laid a very solid groundwork foundation for what we're talking about here. And I'm going to say what is needed in China might be useless in Jafanta. Meaning, I think it should be a location-based decision. I think the approach should be geographical first before the idea, like Chris said, it's a very wonderful idea of, like, say, for example, if the government of Nigeria tomorrow says there's going to be we aim for 24-hour electricity in Nigeria by 2040. It's a good idea. in principle. But then I think you have to narrow it down to, okay, what areas in Nigeria need power more than some at this moment? Doesn't mean the other people should stay in darkness, but it means some people might need a higher allocation of power of watts than others. What to bring it back to what I'm talking about here with the internet, I think it should be location based. The Western society right now, the Western world right now, using myself for example as America, any American that's like the statistics you mentioned about 40 or 4 million Americans not being
42
basically
million. Yes.
42 million Americans not being committed literate. I think that's a choice.
No, not having
I don't-
access to it. Not having access to
Not having
broadband.
access to internet.
Yeah.
I would go on a limb and say that's a choice. You can afford internet here for as cheap as $10 a month. There's not a human being in America that can afford $10 a month.
Okay. Now
It might not be as fast.
Since you went there, let me
Huh?
now let me break down the definition because I have the definition. So the FCC,
Okay.
you're in America, so you know. I don't know what FCC is. I'm guessing Federal Communication,
Yeah.
whatever. They define
Yeah.
broadband as having download speed of a minimum of 25 megabits per second and upload of at least 3 megabits per second. So they're saying 42 million people don't have access. Basically, they have slow internet, not fast internet. So if you have slow internet, you cannot actually
Okay.
access anything. You know, so
Okay,
it's,
so now we are
it's the same as
so
no
now-
internet. Yeah.
so now we say, okay, now this is them trying to tell you what you should strive for. You have access to internet. It might not be as nice as the one in the White House, but you have access to internet.
That makes me feel like crying. Sorry to cut in there because my internet speed, yeah, which is on a premium bundle, 25 ms
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say that's
25
super fast.
25 MB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
What?
So we have to bear in mind that a lot of the Western world's complaints are champagne problems. A lot of them are champagne problems. If we're looking at it from the perspective of like we that were from a third world country.
Not if you can't watch a YouTube
Where-
video that explains the
Huh?
or something like that. Not if you can't watch a YouTube video that explain the news or catch up on your favorite sports or be able to like download your home assignment,
Yeah.
homework, etc.
So I think it should be a location based. That's the entire point of what I'm trying to say. I think it should be a location based thing. There's just a lot. I don't think internet access can hold a candle to other human rights. It's a nice idea. It's not something I'm opposed to, but make it change more.
Okay, fair enough. And Ade, what are your thoughts? Should it be a basic human right, or as they are trying to articulate, Prince, Ade, and Arinze trying to articulate if it's just wishful thinking? What are your thoughts?
I think the gentlemen have said it all. Well, there's a reason the UN hasn't put it on their own list of things that count as poverty. So absolute poverty, 700 million people living under less than $1.90 a day. So I think if people are struggling to afford $1.90 a day, then internet or megabit, gigabit will be the last of their worries. So I like that analogy of the White House internet or champagne problems. Arsenal's concerns are not the concerns of Grimsby FC.
No.
So
No.
you can't compare. So I think for some people the basic things are still very much their focus. So food, shelter, water, security, sanitation. Yes, then things like fiber optic broadband, that's a luxury.
Yeah. So when we talk about this topic, are we saying that internet should be free for all? Because there's a distinction there. Because that's the part I'm not too certain
No,
about.
it's
Are we
just access.
saying that?
Have access to it.
Yeah, I
But
think.
we cannot separate accessibility to the price point.
You can.
I don't want to monetize.
You can simply being like in the developed world, even in Nigeria and Ghana, you have access to water, pipe-borne water. As we used to say, pipe-borne water. You have access to it. Whether you can afford it is a different situation. So you can have access and not being able to afford it. We're not talking about the affordability of it, but to some people, they don't even have access to it. Don't even talk about paying for it. Like they might have the money to pay for this the broadband, but it's not even there. There's no fiber optic cables. There's no mast. There is none of those things available for them to be able to connect to. The
No,
technology
that's
is
I'm happy.
yeah.
crank it to a huge thing.
I'm happy that you've made the conversation very pragmatic, right? I think to an extent, to a very large extent, this conversation about internet becoming a universal human right is more on the idea in principle, and it's more about making that declaration to strive for. A point Morris made earlier on about putting the access to internet as a human right on the same scale as freedom of religion and freedom of speech. Like those are non-negotiable rights that is applicable to everyone around the globe. So that we can concede to. So we cannot put the internet on the same scale. That is granted. Maybe there's scale, there's levels to what should be made a universal human. Some are much more fundamental than others. So we'll put that on the side. But assuming that we want to say the internet can be made a universal, access to internet a universal human right, right? That is so problematic because you see, the example you gave, maybe that will help me to unpack my idea. If access to water is a right for everyone, but the water needs to get to you, someone needs to do the infrastructure needs to be paid for, the water needs to be treated, people need to be employed to do all that. That's a whole economic conversation. And then that's the government coming in. If you want to privatize the provision of internet, again, can a private entity make it give that access?
Yeah.
And if they give that access, what would be, right? There's a price point in there somewhere. Even if the governments are going to take on doing, someone is going to have to fund for it in form of taxation, right? That's so maybe the access to internet, we can have that conversation. We can deliberate on accessibility to internet as a human right. Should we put it out there and try and get everyone to that point? That's the idea of it. But the extent to which we want to put out the idea and then enforce it, I don't know how that would work. Like I was saying earlier on, even access universal basic income is not even flying off the shelf. Who is going to fund these things? Are very, very, very economical. So who is going to make that possible, right? And especially
Even access to basic medical help should take precedence over access to internet. And that
Yes.
hasn't been achieved.
Look at how the extent to which people have smartphones, let alone to even use internet on their phones. The extent how many people have access to computers, for instance. How many of you have access to electricity? Even in some parts of the world, for you to even think about these things, right? When you were talking, I was wondering, imagine we had one or two CEOs from any of the big telcos here, what their view on the topic would be, right? And then if we had maybe an international NGO, what would their view on it be? Especially in our part, the implementation, for me, it's not practical in any way or form. But the idea, even the notion itself, even the idea in principle as something to strive for, it's not something I find even worthwhile for us to deliberate on. That's my position on it. It's so utopian, so idealistic, and it's
seems very far away. The idea seems
yes,
far away.
far. It's such a champagne problem, yeah. Proper champagne problem,
Right.
Yeah. So yes, let me.
Okay.
Let me just end there. Let the others come in.
No problem. So let's solve through these thoughts of champagne problems and whether the access is a wishful thinking. Let's try to pivot a little bit and log in our thoughts on a different question, right? So
Fantastic.
the access to internet, why the United Nations is trying to advocate for this by 2030 is because they want people to have access to information such as educational materials, those globalistic ideas. You can see what's happening on the other side and learn from it. That's the main reason why they're fighting. They would like it to be, I don't know them. It's one of the reasons, one of the key reasons. That's the better phrase.
Can I respond to that before you go on?
Okay, go on. I'll go for it then.
We can provide information easier and cheaper through several alternatives, right? Than without the internet. I mean, for instance, without the internet, how is information being spread? I feel like we can do that, like having information centers, for instance, and then there are other traditional modes.
Although the internet makes it easier, faster, and
Easier, faster,
Convenient.
and
easier,
Well, it has
easier,
Yeah.
faster.
advantages.
You
You have
know, sometimes I feel like the United Nations and the supranational organizations, they formulate their problems and solutions from a very first world perspective,
of course,
right?
that's where they all live.
That yes, but please carry on. Maybe I'll put down my thoughts, and then once you're done, I can respond to it.
Well, you're already kind of answering it. So basically, wherever you are in the world, you've heard stories of parents trying to restrict their children from the kind of information they have access to on the internet. You have seen organizations limit access of their employees to what they can surf on the web while using their organizational
Mm,
organizational broadband and
Yeah.
Wi-Fi. You've seen governments limit access to certain news, certain information from different parts of the world, limiting access to Facebook, limiting TikTok, limiting Instagram, etc. So my question then is, should people have access to all information?
No.
What is your perspective on this? Let's log in our thoughts. Yeah, go on, Arinze. You've said no.
I don't think human beings are responsible enough to have that much power. No one man should have that much power. And that doesn't mean there should be some overload somewhere telling me what to think or telling me what I'm ready for and what I'm not ready for. But I think information, like everything else, should be on a need to know basis. Like for example, let me go on a wild ride here. If aliens did exist and the government dumped all the information they have about aliens, the first world government dumped every information and every access they have to like alien body life form right now. I don't think our minds can handle it. If let's say for example there was some agreement they have with aliens that was like, okay, limit your access and limit your visibility to the human race and you can do whatever it is you're doing on this planet. If they tomorrow they took away that and they said make yourself as visible as possible, I don't think our minds are ready for some things. So I believe not every having access to every information is not, I think it's too much responsibility for human beings. Ignorance is bliss.
No. I don't know
Very
if
much.
ignorance is bliss. I never really understood that statement though. But anyway, but I think, yeah, I think everyone should at least, just like you said, Arinze, be given that choice to decide what information they want and what information they but putting restrictions on certain aspects, because how would you then decide that I know X did this thing where they literally would fact check certain
Yeah.
things and then
Yeah.
either for you could have some of that in place, but even that could be problematic as well, because it just takes a whole community of people that kind of disagree with an idea to come up with their own alternative facts, as we can say. So I think we humans in general need to learn how to filter information and assess which of this information is maybe evidence-based,
Yeah.
because a lot of the times people would spill out opinions as facts, and sometimes that could lead to misinformation and so on. So, but I think generally there's we humans, I don't know, I may be wrong, but I think we humans in general, a lot of us have troubles in some cases, trying to distinguish between facts and,
And
opinions.
we all also have confirmation bias and we want to
Exactly.
keep seeking evidence that whatever it is that we already believe is actually true. Yes.
Yes.
But I
Yes.
guess
No,
sorry to
no,
bound
go on.
just sorry guys. Just so I guess what I'm trying to say is if there is a way we can all know an objective truth, if there's a way we can know 1 plus 1 is 2,
Yeah.
and then whatever, then okay, anyone else that's giving a different opinion than that is just an opinion. If there's no way of knowing an objective truth, I think information should be on a need to know basis. That's it.
Fair enough. Ade, what's
On
your thoughts on this? Sorry to cut you off, Maurice.
Can you just summarize the question for me? Again,
So the
please?
access to information, should people have access to all information? All and every single information you can think about, should they have access to it?
course.
That's a tricky one. My liberal side is telling me, yes, freedom of speech, freedom of knowledge, freedom of, But then I do agree with what Arinze said, that sometimes it's like saying, if you ask that question, then in that case, should we dump on a 5-year-old the birds and the bees? Should we dump on them statistics of rape and abuse? Should we start teaching them all these things at that young age? The thing is, their tender minds, I think as a society, we've agreed, don't need all that gruesome information. So that's why we tell them Santa exists, Man United will win the league, and
Oh,
all these sorts of things. So I think sometimes it's good to mollycoddle people a bit. Not everyone needs information. We both might go to hell. I hope I've not got some angry fans. Anyway, that's all I have to say on that.
fair enough. I
Yeah,
was on
and
mute. Well, go ahead, Morris.
sorry, sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to give an example of like why all having access to all information is not good. Like for example, this might touch home for some people, but think about this. This is me basing having the assumption that like we're all in a heterosexual relationship, right? Or we're all
Yeah,
heterosexual.
yes,
Okay.
you're right.
Would you really, really want to know if you're not the best your girlfriend has ever had? Would you really want to know that information to the details?
Yes.
Mm.
I was
You want to know how much
yeah.
you want better and another guy.
No,
Like you want to
not to the detail, but on the
that's what
overview.
I'm saying. So well, that's what we're talking about, access to all information.
No, but
Because ego.
remember we said
Yeah, it's ego.
Yeah, well,
access.
exactly.
But wait, but there's access and there is tapping into that feed of information.
Yeah.
Now, this is where the choice then comes
We're
in because the
curious.
information could be out there, right? Doesn't mean you want to access it.
We're
So,
curious. We'll always push that red button. Human beings can't see. It's like the story of Lot's wife. We'll always turn back to see the destruction. We'll always turn back.
but if that's the case, then if you're willing to turn back, then you should be willing or ready to accept the consequences of your actions. Then, so I think the information should be there. Maybe,
Using
but
the word that Ade used, I think some people do. Most people, depending on how you gauge someone's maturity, I think cuddling someone's brain is important. Like for example, when I was in university, there was a time period where my family was struggling financially, and I didn't know. And I thank God I didn't know because I know that would have disturbed me in my studies. That didn't mean that he stopped me from feeling in school, but however, it stopped me from having those easy bouts of mental depression and things like that. So it's like information should be on a need to know basis. That is what I
that's the point. The question I was just going to ask. When you say need to know basis, how do you then decide
What
that this
someone
is
needs
what
to
I
know.
need
Yeah.
or what someone else needs?
That-
Who
that-
makes that decision? Shouldn't that decision be, I don't know, just for example, right? You see those intrusive ads that would suggest certain things. Maybe you start thinking about, or you just talk to your partner about a particular shoe or something that you're looking for. Then all of a sudden you start to see
I
those
think it's
information.
harmless. I think ads like that. I get what you're saying, but I think that's
Yeah.
harmless. That
Okay.
I think what is a need to know basis, whatever it is that's on the front burner of society at the moment. Like for example, during the pandemic, the information that was needed to know at that point is the pandemic real or not? They won't give us an objective truth of that. Okay, fine. Now, how do we prevent ourselves from being victims of the virus? There was also a debate on that. That is like information that should have been made known public. That's information that because at that moment, this is you need to have all the access to all the information to decide how you want to approach living in these times. Does that make sense? That's what I think.
Okay. And Prince, should we have access to all information? You've been on the conversation so far. So what is your take on this?
I was listening in and enjoying some questions that were being posed about people wanting to know about their partners. I don't know whether it's escapades or not. And I was
I
like,
don't
wow.
want to know that.
Right. And I heard someone say they are curious to get an overview. Then maybe a PowerPoint slide, like you said.
Yeah,
The overview.
ego. Some people are
So
egotistical.
no, I
Wow.
rather live in the delusion that I'm that guy.
Well, so Maurice, there you
Okay.
go. You say
Well,
you don't know how people mean ignorance is bliss. That's an example.
yes. Perfect example of ignorance being bliss.
Uh,
But accessibility to information. I think the reason why we went down this path was the UN's assertion that internet should become a universal, basic,
Right.
universal right is because they want people to have access to information. And I'll still maintain that information, I mean, the validity of information and the timeliness around it places value on that information, but we can still send around information without necessarily having to make the internet a universal basic right. You know, the case for the internet is that it's cheaper, faster, etc. But what we forget is that there's a huge infrastructural base
Yes.
behind the internet, which is what's powering. So if you think of the infrastructural base required, the mass, the telco investments, what have you, that is going to bring about that cheap internet. We have a holistic picture and we know whether is it really that cheap, right? And then there are some other social implications around it. The feasibility of it is a different discussion. But my point is, if it's with sending about information, right? In my mind, looking at some of the developing countries, how are they sending information about now? Right. I mean, the post office is still functioning in some places, right? There are still print media, newspapers being printed out and then sent out. There's still the radios, okay? There's still the TV stations, all right? So the accessibility, I think then making information available, there's a media available through which information can be sent. There's still what information centers. They put a large speaker somewhere in a town and is blasting information out to the people. So I don't know what they mean by accessibility information to
yeah.
what information, because for me there are alternatives that are in fact more suitable for some geographical areas,
Yeah, speaking
right?
of, sorry to cut you there. Speaking
No,
on
go ahead.
that, I remember in Nigeria, yeah, you would get like newsstands, and in those newsstands, when there's a paper coming out, you would see people just gathered around there in the morning discussing politics, discussing issues, basically taking the headlines there on the spot, digesting it, interactions, social interactions, and all whatnot. It's there, it works fine, and but nowadays, it seems like there's been a little bit of shift from that to like a more digitalized format whereby, and I think that also in its own create a little bit of barrier in terms of communication, relation with others. I mean, yes, it also enhances it in some aspect in the sense that you could meet people you've never met before in different geographical locations. I think eventually, because looking at the trajectory and where we're heading to, there may come a time where the internet would become a necessity. But right now, I don't think it's a necessity. So,
Making it a fundamental human right. I'll touch on this. So we need internet should be accessible. Everyone should have it. Should be a universal right because we need to send out information. The information conversation, right, is a big one. And I want to bring in the ideas of Noam Chomsky when he has this position about manufacturing consent, right? We are talking about spreading information, and we are not looking at the means through which the information is prepared and then delivered, right? Whatever information we are getting is the information is being created by some people, is being edited, and then a stamp of approval is given to on what information should be broadcasted to the masses. And he makes a point that the social elites have information that they want out there, right? And then there's the corporate elite who also benefit from what the infrastructure behind the information also is. So when we look at all of these dynamics, for me, are these power structures going to be in support of the thesis regarding what internet becoming universal basic, right? And the information argument of the UN, I reckon that we can still send information through other means. I see a thumb up on my
Oh, I
screen.
didn't know. I didn't know that could happen here, but
Sorry,
well done.
oh,
I know it used to happen on YouTube or whatever. Well done, Prince. You've unlocked something. They agree with you as well, the internet people.
yeah.
Right, fair enough. As we slowly unwind for this episode, just some quick would you rather questions, piggybacking on what we've said so far. So, to everyone in the panel, would you rather have limited access with strict censorship or unlimited internet access, but only for a few hours a day?
Unlimited.
Okay.
Unlimited.
Unlimited, but only for a few hours a day. Because I mean, that's my reality I'm living in. You have internet, and then they can take it away anytime they want. You can't do nothing about it. So
Yeah.
it's not so different from unlimited internet, few hours a day. Great.
Maurice and Ade, same answer.
So what was the question again?
Would you rather have limited access with strict censorship or unrestricted internet access, but only for a few hours a day?
I feel like both are two sides of the same coin. So if you are limiting the so-called access for, that's also a restriction of its own. So what if the information I need, I can't get it within the restriction or the time limit? So that's a problem. You're also restricting it. So I don't know.
It's the would you rather. For would you rather, you can't sit on the fence.
I think in this situation, sorry to, I know this is supposed to be
Yeah.
a yes or no something, but I think in the situation where what you're describing right now, could it be that you're overestimating how much access you actually really need? Because if we think about it, okay, this is me speaking for myself. Everything I need to do except for work, everything I really need to do on the internet in a day can be comprised into 5 or 6 hours. If I'm told you have only access to internet for only 6 hours in a day, I think I'll be restless in the beginning, but I think I'll be all right. So I'm saying, if you really think about it, how much internet do you really, how much access into internet do you really need? Scrolling on Instagram and laughing at funny videos out the window, you don't really need that to survive.
Yes, you're totally right. But that's the thing. Everyone's information need is different. So for you, maybe 5 hours, but for some other person, it may be just 5 minutes or 10 hours.
Okay.
Right. So this is where, because we are not certain as to where the
Yes,
limit
man. I ask you,
is.
would you, not would
This
people?
has turned into a
As a
PhD.
Okay, sorry, this wasn't supposed to be
All right, and
philosophy.
go on.
Yeah, I'll take the unlimited one for limited time. Is it not Dr. Prince that was teaching me how to watch YouTube videos at double speed? It's become a new normal for me. Watch your YouTube videos at double speed. You need some birds and bees videos. Download it, whatever, do what you need to do. It will teach you new skills.
The time. Dr. Toves, did you have another one of the would you rather questions?
I have two more. But since it's gone to education, let's do educational one, right? Would you rather be able to access the internet anywhere in the world, but only for educational purposes, or have unrestricted internet access, but only in your home country?
Only in my home country, unlimited.
In my home country. Education purpose, what? Education purpose.
Who has education helped?
What? Okay, if you're a college student or if you're a college student, now I guess the first option will make sense more for you. But for me, what? Education? What?
No, the reason being
No,
because
well, educate.
no, go on.
Yeah, education might means you want to. There are some people like someone like me, right? If I don't learn something new in a day, it's like my day is not complete. So I try to feed my brain with as much information as I can get, because I feel like no knowledge gain is a waste, right? That's how I feel. So if you're telling me that I can only access this information in my home country, that means you're basically telling me go back to your country. That's what you're telling me. So
And you don't want to go.
no, I want to have the liberty to choose when to go and when not to go, not someone telling me go back to your home country. That would not go.
Right. The reason
I see your
the reason for the educational purpose is because the UN is saying access mostly for like educational reasons. So that's why I said anywhere around the world, just to batch what they're suggesting, or unrestricted, but only your
There's
own
a way
country.
you can twist it and say it's for educational purpose. You know that thing where when you trick AI, for example, with ChatGPT and the rest AI, when you ask it certain questions, right, it would not give you the answer. It would give you a restricted answer. It would tell you no. But when you rephrase the question and say, I am trying to do a research on this topic,
Mm.
and then let me know what you think. Then it gives you the answer. So in that way, pretty much everything can be framed into that educational purpose. So I think I'll go for the educational one because I can easily just say this is for educational purpose. So
Fair enough. I saw a
yeah.
light bulb go in Ade's eye when you said, "Oh, you can be refreshed." So, what do you think?
I was just thinking how this can be abused by, very
Oh
nefarious
yeah,
people. And
it
oh,
can.
it was just for educational purposes.
Ask him for a friend.
Yeah.
Fair
No, I need the internet for more things than education, so I would rather have to use it for other things as well
Right.
than education.
I
Right.
agree.
The final would you rather for this episode, would you rather live without access to internet in a close-knit offline community or have constant internet access but in a very isolated environment? I
Please,
agree.
the one is one. I didn't hear the start of it. Can you repeat, please?
So would you rather live without internet access in a close-knit offline community or have constant internet access but in a very isolated environment?
This one is easy for me. Yeah, isolated, unlimited. Yeah. Me, I'm very, very comfortable on my own. So I can definitely live.
Yeah, for me, same. Access isolated. I don't care about people like that. So
Hmm.
Wow.
I
access.
I think community takes precedence over internet access for me. So I'd go with the one with the community.
I choose
But I, as
virtual community.
Exactly. I was just gonna say that. I can always
but
reach out to people
it's
over.
not the same thing. It's not the same. It's not the same thing. I think I like human contact. I like having interactions with human beings. I'm one of those people that if I go to a restaurant or something, I make little small talk with the cashier and something like that. I'm one of those people. So I think having contact with human beings is important for me. So I'll take that over, which is crazy because I'm an introvert too. I stay inside my house, but still at the same time, like Maury said, I want to have the option of having access to people. So I'll take community over.
And Ade.
It's funny how I find this one very easy to just say, take me away and give me my internet. But yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
isolation is a real problem. Trust me. But hey, to each his own.
That's
Not
right.
talking to people hasn't killed me so far. And I think basically the second option is how I live my life currently, and I'm still alive. I only see you guys online, so I've not died. So yeah,
But how isolated are we talking?
How-
Maybe in my mind I'm imagining a dystopian world where there's like only 5 people
You're
in my
imagining
circle.
imagine cast away, you're on a rock island by yourself
Yeah,
with
maybe I'm
Wilson.
exaggerating. Maybe I'm exaggerating what you mean.
No, that's what I was thinking as well. Just being,
That's what you're
I'll take the
thinking.
second option as well because, like Ade mentioned, we're doing this via the internet, isn't it? Like we're all in different locations, but we can still have that sense of community. You can still work remotely. Have your teams meeting, etc. So that's where we're going to pause the conversation for today, and we'll continue. We'll still have more to discuss, but we'll continue as another episode. But as we wrap up this episode, please remember that the debate continues whether the internet is officially recognized as a human right or not. You still have to acknowledge the importance for a fair and equitable society. So let's still try to bridge the digital divide wherever you are in developed countries or less developed countries. But
Share
yeah,
your hotspots with people.
exactly. Right. So thank you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Please stay curious, stay informed, press the like button if you enjoyed what we've said so far. And until the next time, people, use your brain. Get more information like Maurice, a CFR.